got back from an absolutely splendid, sun-soaked, Caribbean-esque holiday and trip and vacation to Berlin for one weekend. It was so hot, so warm. I had to wear the smallest shorts, the smallest vest, the skinniest sandals, and I was sipping on Mai Tais and whatnot, and playing flipping football on the beach. It was amazing. Clearly not. Clearly not. It was the opposite. It was rainy, it was sleety, it was snowy, it was all those things wrapped into one, and even more. It's kind of a common held view that Berlin is definitely way colder than it is here in London, if that's at all possible. It's probably a lot more grayer also. I've always said I think it's probably one of the most ugliest European cities out there in terms of to the naked eye, unless you're into graffiti, unless you're into, derelict sort of buildings, unless you're into, just shabbily looking decor in general, which tends to kind of belie what lies on the inside. But for the most part, unless you're in the city center, it's not the most beautiful place on the eye, in my humble opinion. So with that being said, it was still a pretty decent trip, I have to be honest with that, and I did have a lot of good fun over there. I specifically went over there for two things. I went for the sole reason of trying to go to Paloma Bar for the powerhouse, which I think this time around was disco hour that Finn Johansson puts on there at Paloma. I was also planning to go to Tonics party at ITALOMANIA at Oxy, and I was also planning to go to Cocktail de More at Club Ost, which I actually bought a ticket for. I ended up only going to two of those events, so unfortunately the one I bought the ticket for I didn't go to, which is absolutely annoying. The amount of money that I've wasted over the years on buying tickets ahead of time is absolutely legendary, but I also knew it was going to be a roadblock, so I wanted to kind of guarantee my entry, and judging by what I've heard online and the comments I'm reading and stuff, the Cocktail de More party was crazy good, but the garderobe, the flipping cloakroom situation was really out of control. And if you know one thing about people that rave over there in Berlin, they take their cloakrooms very, very seriously. You have to make sure that those things are operational, they're running smoothly, because people are arriving there in their lukes. They want to get them off, they want to fling off the jackets, they want to take off the capes, they want to do all that stuff and bin it so they can be on the dance floor and twirl around and have a great time. So they take those cloakrooms seriously, and they don't really believe in what we do here in London. Like, I realize, like, a lot of people over there are quite, I guess I wouldn't say cheap, but they watch their money, right? They're quite mindful of how they spend their peas. So you don't really see a lot of people like jumping into Ubers or whatnot, especially not the ones I was kind of hanging around with or I was sort of near to. But one thing they don't mind spending money on his cloakrooms. They don't really believe in the idea of like folding your jacket up and putting it underneath a speaker or leaving it behind a chair. They want to put their stuff, even if it's just a jacket they bought in a vintage shop for like €1. They want to make sure it's in a cloakroom so they can collect it at the end of the night and be in kind of peace of mind as they're dancing on the dance floor, which is somewhat understandable. So, going back to the nights that I had over there, I ended up going over there obviously for the weekend, Friday to Monday. Like an idiot, I booked the worst flight ever for the Monday, which kind of was a bit risky and did end up me having to rush to the airport, sweating as I got into the plane because I got there just in time. But I do have to advise anybody, if you are going over there for a boozy weekend and you do plan to go to Berghain or something for the Saturday or the Sunday, and you want to leave, maybe, I don't know, just before it closes at 6 a.m. on a Monday or something, do plan to get a trip or a flight back after 6 a.m. So try and get something, I don't know, at 12 p.m., 6 p.m., whatever you can do on a Monday, as opposed to what I did, which was 6 a.m., which kind of essentially knocked out my Sunday. I couldn't have any ability to go and rave or go crazy on a Sunday because I know I had to be up at 5 a.m. in the morning. So, oh no, I had to be up even before that. I had to be up at like 3 and get to the airport before 5, which was absolutely crazy. So I ended up having to do that. But then I ran into some issue with some accommodation because for whatever reason the Airbnb situation over there isn't as good as it once was. So I had to kind of split my time between staying one night at the Sunflower Hostel and then the other 3 consecutive nights, I guess, staying in this Airbnb on the 2 consecutive nights, actually one day, staying in this Airbnb. Sunflower Hostel is definitely one of the better options to go for in terms of hostels in the area, just because of its location mainly. The hostel itself isn't the greatest. There's no lift there, stairs everywhere. Carrying your luggage can be a bit of a pain in the ass. The rooms are decent enough. I ended up getting a private room because it was only one day, so it wasn't too much of a bother. And I think it was like €50 or something. So again, not the most expensive and not the cheapest, but pretty much decent. But obviously the really big selling point of Sunflower Hostel is that it's literally right down the road from Berghain. It's literally like maybe like 5 minute walk from there, so it's a pretty handy place to go to if you do plan to go to Berghain and Berghain alone. And obviously it's quite in a centrally type of area, so you can get to different sort of parts of places all around flipping Berlin and whatnot. So it makes it kind of handy to kind of get to from the airport because it's near, and also kind of and it also makes it handy to kind of go back home actually, because the location is also easy enough to get the transport straight to the airport directly if you need it. Because I think there's an S-Bahn that runs from the station just a bit further out from Sunflower. I think it's like Wasserstrasse or something. I forgot the name of it, but I'm pretty sure that S-Bahn takes you all the way to Berlin Brandenburg Airport if you need that. So that's pretty handy. So I end up doing that. And yeah, had a good time. I'm not gonna lie. So the first night, obviously, I went to the ITALOMANIA party by Tonics, which was really, really fun. And if anything, it kind of gives it away, the kind of music that they were playing there, essentially Italo disco, sounding music there from Tonics. And Tonics is a label and a collective that I kind of got familiar with because, if I'm not mistaken, I got playing some of the Capote tracks, and Capote also happened to be the founder of Tonics, so I kind of got familiar with their sound that way. And if anything, I just liked the vibe of what they were doing as a collective and putting on parties and raves as well. When I found out later they do put on parties and raves, because they kind of reminded me a little bit of the heady days of like Horse Meat Disco, or even more so, they reminded me of this time when I used to go out to these parties called Love Fever that were really popular here in London for a bit, but they kind of stopped happening because unfortunately the promoters, this duo, one guy called Alex Bradley and I forgot the other guy's name, but they essentially fell out, and Love Fever was kind of no more, or it didn't really continue as the way we kind of remembered it. But the reason why that party was great was because they kind of adopted this kind of David Mancuso type of vibe, Paradise Loft Garage, whatever it may be, where they would basically bring in these really bespoke sound systems, productions, decor into these spaces and transform them overnight into these really amazing kind of wanderlust utopia type things, right? We can kind of unplug from the regular scheduled life. And obviously the music was key and paramount. They'd book really interesting people, they wouldn't reveal lineups, and it would just be like a really sexy, grown up, dancey, fun affair. And considering all the parties I was going to that were really kind of grungy, warehousey type of, big boots, black bomber jacket type of affair, it was quite refreshing to go somewhere like that where everyone was just having fun and kind of letting loose. And I really liked Tonics' approach to it because it kind of reminded me of that, and it kind of just felt like what you describe as a quintessential dance party, like people just ready there to go crazy and to dance. So that was great. And obviously the second thing I went to go to, why I went to go to the party, was to visit this new venue called Oxy, which I only had heard about because, if I'm not mistaken, the club kind of opened around the pandemic times, lockdown, when Berlin were having issues in terms of having clubs reopen. The only way they could get around it was to make sure that the club was sort of like an open, had like an open space, like a gardeny type of thing. And Oxy basically had that because it's got different rooms and it's got like this, it looks like a patio, but essentially it's just like it's kind of like an indoor room on the outside with like a canopy over it, but it kind of does feel like it's inside, if you get what I mean. It's hard to describe it, but they kind of got around it that way. And I kind of knew about the club because of that. And obviously they've got some interesting and cool bookings and whatnot. So I thought, let me kind of kill two birds with one stone, go to a Tonics event in their actual home country or in their home city, whatever, and also go visit this Oxy bar. So I was really amped to go to. Number one, I was really happy that I actually did buy the tickets beforehand, not super beforehand. I think I just bought them the day before I actually left, because as we got to there, the queues were absolutely crazy outside Oxy. Luckily, this time around, they had two separate queues. They had one queue for people that were paying on the door and one for people that had tickets. But still, it was a roadblock because there were tons of people coming every like 10 minutes or so from the guest list and trying to jump in at the front. People were cutting in line to join their friends in the queue. It was a bit of pandemonium. So clearly, there was energy in the air that this was going to be a good and fun night. And it was just nice to see people in the queue who just generally looked like they were up to have a bit of a laugh. No one was dressed in all black. No one was taking taking stuff too seriously. Everyone was laughing and joking. It was the first probably Berlin queue I've been in where people are actually talking. I'm so used to being in flipping and Berghain queues where essentially the conversations start at the right at the back next to the next to the spetty or the place that sells the food and whatnot. But as you get to the gates or the barriers, suddenly everyone turns into a mute and no one wants to say a word anymore. So that was clearly a little bit refreshing to kind of see that happening in real time. So everyone kind of having a laugh in that way, but still had to wait outside for like an hour or so to get in. But once we got to the front of the queue, it kind of quickened up a little bit. And then as we were just about to come and get our tickets checked, the bouncer kind of comes and basically shouts at the top of his voice that there's no more tickets available at the flipping box office and only tickets entries are going to be allowed in, which was absolutely soul crushing people that are in the queue. But it kind of is what it is, but kind of came at a good time. Security not too deep in terms of getting in terms of door selection, I guess because they had tickets already, that kind of made it help. But still, a lot of these Berlin kind of establishments, even if they do sell tickets, they do really make it clear in the descriptions of the events that a ticket doesn't guarantee your entry, kind of thing. So that was obviously nice that I was able to get in. There was no kind of trouble in that regard. Then once you kind of get in, straight as you walk in, that's actually yeah, just to kind of paraphrase this, because I'm not really sure what the vibe is like, because for whatever reason, not for whatever reason, we all know the reason why, but Berlin clubs in general are very strict in terms of no photo, no video policy, and they all make sure they cover your phone before you get in. They all take responsibility to cover your phone for you. Like when we were in the queue, they had people pass along sellotape with the stickers that you can stick on your phone, but also before we walked in, the bouncers individually were double checking and reapplying stuff on there, so they take responsibility to make sure your phones are covered. Cool. So I'm not too sure if that means that you shouldn't describe anything that happens on the inside or what the place looks like, or whether it just means you shouldn't have any video and not kind of invade people's personal private space or privacy, whatever it may be. I don't know, but I'll just describe it in kind of vague generalities. But essentially when you walk in, the kind of garderobe is there. They have 2 stations that you can kind of leave your jacket in and your belongings, whatnot. So it's a pretty easy system. You know the deal with that one. But the actual layout of Oxy is the interesting part about it. It's loads of different rooms, loads of these little kind of pockets of spaces. Essentially they've got 2 dance floors, maybe 3 if you count the outside space, and then they have these little rooms, to kind of like a dark room, another room that's kind of like a half dark room because the doors can't close. There's no because there's a dark room they have that's got boxes with like curtains you can close, and then they've got a dark room that you can't. It's just like a box, kind of like similar to like with the places that you see in Berlin or in Berghain, where it's like a box, but it's got like a slit, like a hole you can walk in, but it doesn't close at all. So there's kind of, you just rest out and relax and whatnot. But the most interesting part about it that I really liked was its little cocktail bar area they've got towards the back. That is essentially its own little thing. So you can go there and just like, and it's kind of brightly lit, and there's like nice cushions and chairs and whatnot and whatever to sit down on. There's even bar stools to sit on at the bar if you want to and just have a drink. You don't want to do anything else with dance, or maybe you want to hear the music come through the system, but you just want to have a drink at the bar, you can do so. And I absolutely love it. I think that's absolutely amazing. So that was pretty cool to see that vibe. And the cocktails of the bar were really nice. I think I had an Oxy Mule. That was like a ginger beer, spicy type of thing, affair that I really had a good kind of, swig on a couple of those. I got my little pretty heels on the dance floor. It's shocking out. But the main dance floor was the really amazing part that I kind of had to like stress and really kind of talk about, because I thought that was absolutely amazing. And I think when I walked in at the time, again, I'm not really too familiar with the DJs that kind of play, under the Tonics banner. Obviously, I'm familiar with Kapute because that's the person I obviously got kind of knowledge of Tonics through his productions, and obviously him being the owner kind of makes more sense of kind of knowing who he is. But in general, I think what they've done a good job of is kind of just people trusting the overall brand. So I went mostly because of the brand Tonics and what they're about and what they represent, and know it would be a good time, as opposed to thinking, I want to go see a particular person play. But I do remember when I did roll in, this guy was playing, Daniel Monaco, and he was absolutely destroying, legitimately destroying. And I've got a clip that's coming up hopefully in a few minutes. I've taken a few clips out of me at the Oxy, and I think the first 2 clips or little sound bites you hear from my voice notes that I recorded there will be tunes that Daniel Monaco was playing, and you probably hear me hooting and hollering and yee-hawing in the background like an Italian tourist. It's absolutely cringy, but it is what it is. I am who I am. So when I walked in, that was happening. And the vibe inside the main dance floor was electric. It obviously helps that in all Berlin clubs, for the most part, they will have a dedicated what do you call them? I think they're called AV, right? The person that does all the lighting and whatnot and the smoke machines and whatnot. They have a dedicated person handling that. So that was going off amazing. They've got all these like amazing like X's on the roof, essentially, kind of going back to the name Oxy, that kind of like these light beams that light up in a certain way. The smoke that comes out is insane. It was such an amazing vibe. People dancing, electricity in the air, people shocking out, moving around. It was just such a good vibe. And in general, you saw way more people out there like legitimately making an effort to dress up, like a lot of people that you would regularly see maybe in like, you know, traditional techno parties were trying to put on, you know, some disco leggings on, maybe a boob tube, maybe, you know, all the lads I saw, they were wearing their kind of festival shirt, you know, the ones with patterns on it that boys wear when they go to fucking festivals. They had all those on and whatnot, and just generally just, you know, having a bit more fun with what they wear, and clearly having a bit more fun on the dance floor and not taking themselves too seriously. The amount of people that I saw on the dance floor, you know, sucking each other's faces off was also a good sign that the party was popping. There was, I'm sure most of them were couples, but there were a lot of people that were finding love under the flipping X's or flipping Oxy on that dance floor, while flipping Daniel, Monaco and co were absolutely slaying on the flipping decks. So that was absolutely great. Then I went into the second room for a bit. Also, second room is maybe design wise better than the first one, because the DJs are essentially in this mad little cage thing that kind of reminds me of the cores back in the day, but it's a cage that's kind of cylindrical and square, and you can walk around it. And then then they've got benches on the back you can sit down on. Then the walls are covered in the beams. Like, it's just a really cool space how they've kind of put it together. Really, really nice. And that room was crazy good too. They were shelling in there, but I think most people wanted to see the main act, so they were kind of staying in the main room. But the second room was also completely going off. And the nice guy that was playing there, who I wish I remember his name, but he did give me a track ID for a track that I really liked, called Call Me Mr. Telephone Answering Machine. Sorry, Call Me Mr. Telephone Answering Service, which I'm going to play as my tune of the day at the end of the show. So if you want to listen to that, then definitely check out the rest of the show to see the clip that the track ID he kind of gave me. But that was also amazing. So in essence, what I really liked about it, like I said, I think it was just nice to be able to go to Berlin and listen to that kind of music in that city, because it's so dominated by techno. It's so dominated by that music. Like, that's what you kind of know Berlin for. And to be honest, like, you know, maybe it's a bit of a waste of time going to a place like Berlin only to listen to disco, because you can listen to that anywhere. But I did like to kind of listen to Italo disco for the most part, you know, and what I would describe just broadly as dance music. I don't even just describe it as disco in the house, which is kind of a loose genre, you know, genres that kind of heavy on listing for the event. I just think it was just good dance music that was played throughout the entirety of the night. And I think it ended at about 6 or 8 a.m. I think, I'm not too sure. Yeah, 8 a.m. Sorry, I think I left at about 6 or something, so not too late. And yeah, had a great time. Absolutely amazing. Really, really fun. And if anything, it really, really inspired me to think about throwing my own event again and doing something, because I've always wanted to kind of get back into promoting. As you guys have known, you know, I used to do a pretty popular club night here in London at the now defunct club called the Alibi, called So Special. That was really good to begin. You know, it kind of started up, me and the guy that kind of set it up, the premise was kind of to push and promote, you know, funky house, when that was a real big thing, and to kind of introduce it to a quote unquote white audience, essentially basically the hipsters, and get them to be on it. And we kind of did a good job of doing that. But then over time, we just turned into just put on a good party, a fun party, book our friends, and book people we'd like to see. And we always kind of did a good job of doing that, and kind of, you know, doing a good job of kind of decorating a room with posters and shit and all that sort of naffy stuff. But it was always a good time to have an event. And obviously it was a good chance for me also, because I got a chance to DJ. That's the first time I got to actually DJ at an actual club, because I had to kind of warm up, because we didn't have enough money to pay for warm up DJs, so we had to just figure it out ourselves. And I ended up kind of trying to use kind of CDJs for the first time, actually burning CDs and whatnot, and trying to make that work. So I haven't done one of those in ages, a long time. If anything, I've been trying to push myself to get booked as a individual DJ myself, which has been a little bit more difficult than I expected it to be. But another way to kind of get ahead of the queue is just to throw your own night, and in that way suddenly you then become somebody that's kind of in demand. So that might be an option to go forward. And the reason why I thought that'd be quite interesting, because I think, you know what actually might have also made me kind of interested in Tonics, was the actual logo of Tonics, right? Is interesting, because if I'm not mistaken, if I actually click their promoter tag here, hopefully it has a logo listed on there. Let me just double check here before it loads up on the screen. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. So this logo from Tonics that they have here, of this blacksmith looking type of dude illustration kind of banging on a vinyl, right? It was a pretty cool logo. It oddly enough reminds me a little bit of what I had going on with this little SoundCloud account that I set up for my little, you know, nondescript, non-existing flipping record label called Persistence, right? And if anything, I should have maybe had it at an angle, I maybe should have had the person pushing the boulder up a hill, because if you can't see the image, essentially it's an image of a guy pushing a boulder that I kind of, stylized and kind of cropped around and made myself. I think they're two separate images that I kind of put together on Photoshop and stuff. I'm pretty sure I got the original PSD file somewhere, but that maybe should be up a hill. But that was kind of the idea I had about it, and maybe I should kind of use this going forward as my nondescript dance party night going forward, because I got that inspired from what Tonics are doing. And that's probably something that I'm probably going to explore going forward, because I don't know, it was just nice to see. I think maybe as well my idea about it was kind of skewed, because I think the popularity of the night might be because of just how long established they've been around, maybe because people love the DJs, just because it's maybe just also because I think I was thinking, I was on the dance floor thinking maybe a lot of people just wanted a kind of a change from the regular scheduled programming, because that entire weekend was pretty techno mad. There was an event happening at, if I'm not mistaken, what's it called? I think RSO. There was obviously Cocktail du Amore happening, but there was a lot of techno heavy nights happening on that weekend. So people maybe just wanted a bit of respite from that regular do 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 do, which I can kind of understand. So maybe the reception and why it was so busy was more to do with what they're doing, and obviously the lack of what they're about, being in that city, or just maybe there's an appetite for it overall that I can maybe latch onto as well and do my own way here in London. I don't really know. I'll kind of figure it out as I go along, but gonna quickly play a clip here that kind of features a couple of the mixes early on as I was arriving there. As I said before, I'm pretty sure these clips are of Daniel Monaco playing. I'm pretty sure, because that's who I saw as I walked in, because I think I walked in about 1 or 2 a.m. if I'm not mistaken. So definitely I think it was Daniel Monaco that was slaying on the dance floor as I was arriving in that venue. But if it isn't, whoever was playing absolutely smashed it. So here this clip taken from the Tonics event, a couple of voice notes that I probably put together. Again, I'm hoping this is okay. I have to take videos or whatever, so I just recorded this kind of with the phone in my pocket and whatnot, and just kind of so I could have an audio field recording of my kind of vibe as I was in there. But hopefully you guys enjoy it as I play this clip now from when I was inside there. Let me just get up on your screen. yeah, you get an idea of what happened. You get an idea of what happened. Absolutely splendid. Had a great time. Cannot complain. Had an amazing time. Obviously, getting out of those places is also a bit of a blast as well. Easy to deal with. Going out, getting your cloak, getting your jacket from the cloakroom, all the bouncers saying bye and safe travels and whatnot as you're leaving, to make sure that you're okay. Jumping on a taxi or getting on a train is pretty easy because they're all around places. Or even actually, the other thing to mention as I kind of wrap this up, it's quite obviously. I think transport wise, we're sort of spoiled here in London mostly. Like there's loads of stations near things, and I think the maximum time you have to walk maybe it's 5 minutes, but in Berlin it's it kind of feels more longer because the roads are so straight. It's always kind of exits. Everything's kind of like horizontal and vertical lines and whatnot, right? Kind of like a grid system, but it just feels a bit further. But I think it is further. I think they're probably more spaced apart. So essentially, it works really well. It works really good after a night out because you're kind of forced to kind of decompress by having a kind of brisk walk out in the cold. So you kind of get to sober up a little bit and chill, kind of get your temperature down before you go back home. And obviously going back to a hostel that night, you probably need to have your temperature kind of lowered a little bit because you're going to be in a building full of thousands of people again, so you kind of need to chill. Even though I was in a private room, it's so important to kind of have that level of kind of down, sort of like down regulating yourself. So that's quite nice, that kind of ability to do so I quite like that. So I had to bit of a walk, chilled out a little bit, popped into Spetty, got myself a bottle of water and one, a packet of crisps, some Lays, and just kind of went back home. Like I had an absolutely splendid time. I cannot complain about that event whatsoever. So if you do have your eye on an event, I think they're meant to be, if I'm not mistaken, Tonics I think are doing a night at the jazz club or something like that. If don't quote me on that one, but I think they have a night happening in the UK in the jazz club. I think they have something else they're doing in Manchester in the UK. So if you're in the UK and you are kind of interested, I definitely recommend you check out Tonics on RA and check out their events. I do recommend checking them out. I think they're doing a special event in Munich every Friday for the next few months or something, which is pretty sick. They've got this kind of long-term residency going on over there, and Munich as well, another city in Germany if you want to kind of discover, which I kind of maybe even might do as a little bit of techno tourism to kind of go and check out. So definitely that's something that's going to be on the cards. But yeah, big up Tonics. It definitely was a great party. Definitely has now inspired me to maybe try and do my own thing here in London again. So that's definitely a trip that I was happy that I definitely took.